And why they're not aware of it, I really can't explain that. Maybe the advisor just took the path of least resistance and talked about something that's quick, easy, simple. When we do our tax planning, nobody wants to pay taxes currently. So that's where having the right corporate setup comes in. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. The right retirement plan setup also makes a lot of sense.
Welcome back to the Legal Lead Shark podcast, where high-growth law firms and the marketers who power them come to sharpen their edge. If you're obsessed with leads, conversions, and building law firms that dominate your market, you're in the right place. We dive deep into the top minds of legal marketing, from agency owners to the next generation of law firm owners who are making waves, uncovering the strategies, tools, and mindset that it takes to turn more clicks into signed cases. I'm your host, K'Lee Terrazas, and today's guest, Frank Rekas, is coming back for round 2 on the podcast. Last episode, we broke down the Rockefeller method for law firm owners and high net worth individuals, showing them how to structure money not only as a smart tax strategy, but also as a way to create a personal reserve fund that you can access when needed. If you missed that episode, it's definitely a must watch. Today, we're shifting gears into all the tax strategies that law firm owners should know. Frank has more than 30 years in the industry, and he's pulling back the curtain on the overlooked strategies that are costing law firms hundreds, even thousands of dollars a year. Frank, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, K'Lee. Glad to be here and happy to take part in round 2.
For anyone that missed the first episode, they can go back and watch that later, but just give everyone a quick who you are, where you're from, and then background. You've done wealth management for a long time.
Sure. Born and raised in Chicago. I mentioned that because a piece of my heart is always going to be there. I live in South Florida now, and I've been in financial services for 34 years as of July. And as of September of 2024, I'm an independent financial planner. So what that means is that I don't have corporate proprietary products that I have to show or have to sell. So we're totally independent, which really allows me to be as objective as possible for our clients. I specialize in working with law firm owners, something that just happened organically. And I really enjoy working with them, and I enjoy helping them get through the maze of financial planning and looking for their future and helping them get to the freedom that they want.
Yep, same here. I've been in digital marketing since 2016, got my first law firm marketing client 3 years ago, and I love working with attorneys. I love the high stakes, competitive, fast moving game of legal.
I tell everybody in my next life I'm going to be an attorney, and all the attorneys tell me, no, don't do that.
Okay, now this episode, again, last episode, if you missed it, definitely go back and watch it. It was a great episode talking all about the Rockefeller method, which I actually have personally studied for years. And it is probably one of the best tax strategies or wealth planning strategies that a law firm owner who's a high net worth individual could put into place, for the exact same reason that it worked for the Rockefeller family. So if you guys missed that, go back and watch that for sure, because there was a ton of information in there that you don't want to miss. And even some stories of how Frank has worked with attorneys who had some blind spots that he immediately knew how to fix. And it really turned the firm around as far as their wealth planning went. Today, we're going to talk, we're right before tax season. So the dreaded T word, right?
Yeah.
So today we are going to talk all things tax strategy. We're rolling back the curtain. Again, Frank is a wealth management advisor. He works very closely with CPAs, but he is not a CPA. So this is educational use and real life stories that Frank has been able to help clients in one facet or another with some blind spots they weren't seeing, so that they could start putting more money back into their firm and into their wealth strategy. Frank, let's start with the first blind spot that you see that it's probably the most common as far as tax strategies go that law firms are missing out on. And why do you think that this area is slipping through the crack with so many attorneys, even who have CPAs and bookkeepers, but they're still missing?
There's probably two that stick out quite a bit, but let me go to the easier one first, and that is having the proper retirement plan set up for yourself. If you're a solo law firm owner, you have nobody else, maybe you have consultant that does some of your legal work and your administration, but you're the only person in your firm as a sole practitioner. I've seen a lot of law firm owners who have a traditional IRA, right? You can only put away $7,000 a year into a traditional IRA, $8,000 if you're 50 or older. That's not a huge tax benefit. Still a smart thing to do if that's where your income lies, but you have to be careful about where you are on the income chain, because at certain levels, you're going to be what we call maxed out and you won't be able to contribute and get the deduction. You can still make a contribution to an IRA, you just can't get a deduction. The next thing is called a simplified employee pension, or for lack of a better, use the acronyms SEP IRA. Now, SEP IRA is a great tool. You can put away a lot more money than your traditional IRA. Usually it's about 25% of your W-2 income, or if you're paying yourself distributions, it's about 20% with a maximum, I think this year is like right around $59,000. However, if you have the ability to put more money away, a solo 401k might be a better option, because you can make your 401k contributions and you can add a profit sharing element to it, right? So if you have profits at the end of the year, you can contribute more dollars to that. One of the major advantages between a 401k and a SEP IRA is that the 401k has loan provisions. Not that we want people taking loans from their 401k, but sometimes you have a cash crunch. Sometimes you need funds from somewhere. You don't know where else to go. A 401k could be an avenue where you could actually get money from. Obviously, you're going to pay yourself back, right? Because you don't want that loan to default, because then it's going to count as income. Whereas if you have a SEP IRA, you're not taking a loan, you're actually taking a withdrawal. And if you're under 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. And then based upon what you take out, you're going to have taxes to pay on that money. So they're a little bit different. I always go through the process with whoever it is that I'm speaking to make sure that we have the proper setup. Sometimes it's going to be the SEP IRA. Sometimes it's going to be the solo 401k. But as you also have employees and develop a larger firm, you're going to probably want to switch to or have a 401k plan. But it can get tricky because a lot of firms don't have it established the right way. So what do I mean by that? And K'Lee, I'm going to try and keep this as smooth and simple as I can. But let's say that me, you, and your husband, Jason, are a law firm. I'm the owner of the firm. You and Jason, one of you is an associate attorney, one of you is a paralegal. Doesn't matter who. If the average compensation contribution that you contribute is 5% between the two of you, the most I can put in is 7%, because there can only be what we call a 2% spread between someone in my position and what we'll call the rank and file. So if I'm making, just to say a number, if 7% really, enough for me to put away, maybe it is. I don't know. We have to do some calculations. If I'm making $200,000, is 7% enough for me to put away? The real test is, or the problem becomes, is if you're putting in 3% and Jason puts in 0, now the average of that is 1.5. I can only put in 3.5%. That's a problem.
Mhm.
That's a big problem, because I'm not getting maximizing the tax deductibility of putting away those dollars into a 401k plan. So a solution to that is adding what we call a safe harbor plan, allowing for what was called safe harbor contribution. Now, regardless of what you and or Jason put in, I can put in the MAC contribution, which in 2025 is $23,500. And if I'm 50 or older, I can put in another $7,500. So what that does is it allows me to put in the max if I want to put in the maximum amount. But whatever it is you're contributing, I have to do a match. And just to keep it simple, it's approximately 3% of what I would have to match of your compensation up to your salary level. So it allows me to put away more money. On top of that, you could layer a profit sharing plan as well. So it's the design of a 401k plan that typically is the thing that sticks out the most for us when we're working with a law firm owner, because there are different ones. And why they're not aware of it, I really can't explain that. Maybe the advisor just took the path of least resistance and talked about something that's quick, easy, simple. Let's get something on the books, without really doing some planning to see how much the law firm owner wanted to put away and what is really the goal, and what is the objective of the firm owner.
Yeah. It gets really tricky because wealth management is very individual. Every single person on paper, you could look exactly the same. Your firm size could be the exact same as another firm, exactly numbers for numbers, but it's also goal based. And it's also, there's some people who are conservative and some people who are more aggressive, some people that live on a higher income of their monthly expenses, and others will tighten up. So all of this is very individualized. And that's why it pays to not only talk to somebody like Frank, and I know Frank can, I don't know, like I know you do in-depth consultations where you zoom out, you see where they are and then where they want to be, because again, that's different for everyone. If you want to live retirement in Mexico on a beach somewhere, it's going to look a lot different than retiring in like Palm Springs, Florida.
Right.
So I highly advise you, and I personally work with Frank. So like on my personal income, I'm having him advise me, but I definitely advise you, even if you have an advisor, it's always a good idea. And I am the first to say I appreciate loyalty. So if you've been with a guy and he's your guy for a long time, I appreciate that. But in marketing, I will tell people in 5 minutes to 20 minutes, I can take a high 30,000 foot view of your marketing strategy. And I can tell you if it's aligning with what you told me your goals were. And sometimes what happens, and I'm working with a large medical clinic right now who they expanded 6 locations. They got where they are, but the team that they have in place right now they're bottlenecked. They're not moving anywhere forward. So sometimes you do have to get an outsider to look at everything and see, did your planner miss something? Or if you haven't talked to your planner in 10 years and you've just been on autopilot, a lot's probably changed in your priorities and perspective. And then there's other times, like Frank, you had an example in our last episode of a guy that couldn't get insured and his other partners could, and it was holding them up from moving forward. And you knew of a gray area that could fix the problem. And the first question he asked you, because you and him are friends, is, why didn't my planner tell me this already? And you shrug your, I don't know, maybe he didn't know, or maybe you didn't talk to him about the changes. I don't know. But sometimes people can be experts, but not know everything. And it's valuable to get a second opinion.
Absolutely. And I think because of the years of experience that I have, and don't let that scare anybody away, because I've been doing this for so long, I'm not going anywhere for a long time. But I have a business partner. She's younger than me. The partners at the firm, they're younger than me. So, nobody has to worry about Frank disappearing in a couple of years. That's not going to happen. But I've been able to educate myself very well on a lot of the tools and a lot of the ideas that are out there. One other item on the retirement planning spectrum that I want to mention, if I can, is there's also a plan called a simple IRA. It's a little bit different than a traditional IRA because you can put more money in, and it's a little bit different from a traditional 401k because you can't put in as much, but there's less administrative costs. And if someone is going to be contributing to a retirement plan, they can do more than the traditional IRA. But they don't want to do, or they aren't going to do as much in the 401k, and maybe they have a small firm, maybe there's 5 people and the employees aren't going to contribute either, or maybe only one of them is. Doing a simple IRA gets you almost there. I think it's the 16,500 annual contribution, very minimal paperwork and very minimal as far as the expenses go. Now, if you don't have a retirement plan and you set one up within the first 3 years of a plan, there is a tax law out there where you would pay credit on your fees, your administration costs and setup fees. It's up to $5,000 a year for the first 3 years. Also, there's a few states that require setting up a 401k plan, or if you don't, depending on the year, for example, California, you have to set one up by the end of 2025. They will put you in a state mandated, I guess is the word to use, retirement plan. So anybody listening from California, if you haven't established a 401k plan, it is August 27th as we record this, you don't have a lot of time to get one set up. So I would look into that either with your advisor or someone that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for those firms that may be on the smaller side and maybe don't want to go the 401k route because of contributions or because of overhead, and they do one of the other IRA options, Frank, you can also stack on top of that personally the Rockefeller method. So again, Another plug to go watch that video. But in short, just give a summary because they can go back and watch the full breakdown there, but of what we're talking about when we say the Rockefeller method.
So when we do our tax planning, nobody wants to pay taxes currently. So that's where having the right corporate setup comes in. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. The right retirement plan setup also makes a lot of sense. There's a couple other ideas that we left out, but we can get to that later. But also when you're at retirement, if you put everything in what we'll call a tax qualified plan, 401k, IRA, simple IRA, if all of your dollars are in tax qualified plans, you're basically creating a tax bomb because we don't know what the tax rate's going to be in the future. We're in a low tax environment right now, may not feel that way, but go back to the days when tax rates were significantly higher than they are today. But when you take all these dollars out of your 401k or your retirement plan, you're going to be taxed at a rate that you don't know what it's going to be in the future, number one. And when you get to a certain age, for some people, it's still 72. For others, it's going to be 75. You're going to have to take money out of your retirement plan. And maybe you don't need it. Like my brother, he's 10 years older than me. He's retired. He doesn't want to take his required minimum distributions. You don't have a choice. By establishing the Rockefeller method, you're going to be making after-tax contributions into a life insurance policy. Normally, whole life is used. We can use an index universal life. There are some nuances between the two. But what you're doing is you're creating another asset class in your portfolio. Obviously, you have a death benefit. And then you're going to have cash value that's accumulating on a tax-deferred basis that you actually have access to if you need it for emergencies, college education, you want to buy or put a down payment on a house, whether it's a primary or a secondary, you want to finally get an office building to have your law firm at and you want to own that building, you can go into your life insurance policy when there's cash value available to you, take it from there, and then use those funds for other things. I think I gave the example on the last podcast that Walt Disney started Disney by borrowing money from his life insurance policy. That's a pretty great return on your investment. The other thing is because there's life insurance here, when you pass away, you're leaving that to your heirs, whether it's your spouse, significant other, your children. And if you keep multiplying that method, that's how people stay wealthy. That's how people have a great start to their lives. Imagine I come from a family that did not have a lot of money. We were okay. My father died, nominal amount of life insurance. My mother passed away, nominal amount of life insurance. But imagine being in a position where your family is leaving something for you to help better your future and to help better the next generation's future. Because that's really what, the Rockefeller method is creating generational wealth.
Yeah, 100%. Typically, people have enough to cover expenses, final expenses with life insurance. It's not a wealth strategy. And again, we talked about in that episode, if you're the Dave Ramsey follower, you're not going to appreciate this method because he's talking to the masses. We're talking to more of the affluent crowd. And so this is a totally different conversation on life insurance. This is wealth strategy versus covering final expenses strategy. But there was a great book.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up for clarification purposes.
Yeah, for sure. I had a book recommendation and then you have one today to piggyback.
Sure.
But Garrett Gunderson, if you want to know more about the Rockefeller method, why the Rockefellers are still one of the wealthiest families in America. And at that time, the Vanderbilts were also one of the most wealthy families. The Vanderbilts lost essentially all of their wealth within 3 generations. The Rockefellers still have it. And they use the strategy we're telling you about in a very specific way, which Frank's your advisor. He can guide you through. He knows exactly what they did. So if that's something that you're interested in, making sure that each generation is taken care of above and beyond just paying for your final expenses, it's a brilliant strategy. I think, yeah, I'm with you, Frank. I wish my family would have set this up. Oh, we can all be the first.
Is this the book? Sorry, I escaped for a second.
Yes. Yeah.
I just got it.
It's such a good book. And then, Frank, you had one you're reading currently that you said's a great piggyback off of that for those that are really interested in wealth management. What book did you mention to me this morning?
Yeah, so I just finished reading, it's called Permission to Spend, and it's by Tom Wall. He is a PhD, and he goes through a very similar process to the Rockefeller method, but by to spend, let me give you, and I'm not trying to steal his thunder at all. He does a great job here of explaining, but let me give you like a very basic format. Let's say you've accumulated $2 million, right? And now you're retired and that's what you have to live on. And if you're using the traditional 4 or even 5% withdrawal method because you want to hang on to your principal, you're going to be drawing $100,000 a year, right? You're also going to be paying taxes on that $100,000 a year, assuming that all that money is in a tax qualified plan. Now, if the market takes a tank and corrects 20, 30, 40%, as we have seen every now and then that's going to reduce that $2 million that you're trying to hold on to. So now let's say it goes down to, I don't know, $1.6 million. Now you're taking out 5% of that. Those dollars are coming out taxable. What Tom is recommending and what the Rockefeller method is really recommending is also establishing a permanent life insurance policy that's building up cash value so that in the event that the market does have a correction, instead of taking more money from your investment, you're actually going to take the money that you would have taken from your investment from your life insurance policy and borrow that money out of there to keep that principal as whole as you possibly can. It just gives you options that you don't have if all you have is an investment account. And at a company that I used to work at, they used to call this process person A, person B. Person A has $2 million invested. That's all they have. Person B has $2 million invested, but also has a cash value life insurance policy to give them options down the road so that when they get into a situation where the market corrects, they have another avenue to go to. It's a great book. I read through it real quick. I'm going to read it again pretty soon because like with a lot of things that you read, you miss a few things and it's a great process. So that along with the book by Garrett Gunderson really give you a nice basic foundation of what it is that you're trying to create. I know a lot of people don't think they need life insurance. I know there's a lot of people who are against life insurance. Every situation is different. It is not for everybody, but I think if you're earning good money and you're trying to minimize your taxes in the future, it's definitely an asset class and an option that you want to take a look at. It just has to be set up correctly. And without getting into those details, on this webinar, just make sure that you're working with someone who knows the ins and outs of a life insurance contract so that there's no surprises down the road.
Yeah, that is a big disclaimer here.
Cool.
Reading the book and knowing what to do and then having an advisor who also knows what to do is very important in that strategy actually working. And it can work. I mean, it worked out well for the Rockefellers, for Disney, for hundreds of thousands of other people who realized that just investing wasn't going to be enough. And even if it was enough for them, it left no legacy. And again, everybody's priorities are different, but I know people who have left millions, if not billions of dollars to nonprofits and things like that they really cared about. So it's just to each their own, but that is an option that most people don't consider. And it's a big miss. So that's something we wanted to highlight on this. Now, we had mentioned, Frank, different classes or structure entities, if you will. So let's talk a little bit about anywhere from the solo practitioner law firm up to a big whale in the market, how they chose their entity, if you will, at LLC, S Corp, practitioner. Let's talk through that a little bit and some pros and cons as far as tax strategy goes that people might be missing.
Yep. So good topic. So yesterday, and I'm in South Florida, most of the businesses down here, whether you're a law firm or a construction company or something else, most of them are what we call F corporations. Now, you might have an LLC, which has some liability protection, but you have to operate as either an F or a C. But it's usually the smaller firms that are operating as an S. And as I tell everybody, please consult with your CPA. I am not a CPA. The differences between the two, but what is best for you is not necessarily something that I should be recommending or putting my stamp of approval on. So we collaborate with your CPA to make sure that you have the right entity structure. Talking with a client yesterday, and she was actually complaining or a little sour about her structure. And after doing a little bit of digging in the conversation, she's a sole proprietor. and she's operating as a sole proprietor, and she's not able to contribute more to her retirement plan because of that. So I said to her, I said, have you spoken to your accountant or CPA about having a different structure? And she was like, what do you mean? I go, what about doing an S corporation? I've heard of that. All my other friends who are in this business have set those up. I don't know why my CPA hasn't said that to me. Well, maybe it's time for a new CPA. Do you know anybody? Yeah, I do. I connected her. I already see the email chain going back and forth. We're trying to talk later this week. So I'll give an example of the advantage of going from a sole proprietor to having an S corporation for yourself. If you were making $350,000 as a sole proprietor, you're going to pay about $32,000 in employment taxes. If you create an S corporation and you pay yourself a legitimate salary, let's call it $120,000, and then the balance of the $230,000 comes out as distributions to you, you'll only pay about $18,000 in change in self-employment taxes. That's a savings of about $14,000 a year times 10 years. Based on my math, that's 140 grand, better in your pocket than in Uncle Sam's. And that's just one small move. What if we did something with your retirement plan? What if we did something with a profit sharing plan? What if we did something with a cash balance plan, depending on your income level? So how you have your corporation set up is a big thing that you need to take a look at. And it doesn't take long for a good CPA to calculate and figure out which is a better way for you to do something. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Other times it does. But remember, the more money you make, the more taxes you're going to pay, the more problems you're going to have. So it's just another way of looking at how you can minimize those taxes that you are required to pay to the IRS. Now, the other entity structure that's very common is a C corporation. That's typically going to be for your larger law firms. It's a completely separate tax return. You're taxed at a completely separate rate. Even though you are an owner of a firm, that flows into your personal, and it's got to be calculated correctly by your CPA. Again, I am not a CPA. Does it make sense for all entities? No, it does not. Just like the S corporation doesn't make sense for all entities. But normally it's the larger firm that's going to be a C corporation, and totally separate listing of how you do your deductions and so forth. So again, consult with your CPA to make sure that you have the proper setup. And it's a legitimate question. Even though they may not have brought it to your attention, it's definitely a legitimate question because you want to make sure that you're not overpaying on your taxes.
That, and also if you're a sole proprietor, you're taking a lot of personal liability and risk. So that I think would be, in my personal opinion, and I'm not a CPA either, but that would be the worst.
Oh,
The
yeah.
worst feeling, because you're taking a lot of risk. If someone comes after you, they're coming after you and not your business. And those are two totally different things. That's something to consider as well. Hopefully none of you listening are a sole proprietor. If you are, I would immediately be talking to your CPA and a wealth strategist to get that restructured and get some of that risk and liability off of you.
Absolutely, for sure. Like I said, maybe I said it in the last podcast, people will spend 10 hours planning a 2-week vacation, but they won't spend an hour a month, 2 hours a month planning their financial future. There's a little bit of imbalance there. Again, the heavy lifting is at the beginning. Once we get started, then all the heavy lifting falls upon me and my team, and we make it pretty simple. But you need to pay attention to your financial picture because playing catch up is not fun. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And it can be very costly where Jason, so my husband, he works alongside me in operations and sales, but he's been in HR, payroll, credit card processing for years. And he brought his brokerage over. He's working with a company who they're doing a lot of cleanup, and that is very expensive to have to go back and fix things. And it can be very costly if that is because they caught you and not because you want to clean it up before they catch you.
Yeah.
But that can sink people faster than they know and just be a headache that you don't have to deal with. There's also a lot of blind spots, like talking about money. Jason does a lot of payroll processing for law firms, and there's so many tax credits or benefits that people don't file for.
Yeah.
One big one, I think it's like 11,000 a year or something. Don't quote me on it because again, he's the expert. But that a law firm had hired a former military veteran, and this all is pending doing it during hiring. So now it's too late. But there's thousands of dollars that they could have gotten in tax credit, at least in Oklahoma, for hiring a military veteran that they missed. And I think that's the second time that they've hired a veteran. So those are little things. These are the reasons you want people who know their field. And Frank, going back to your 30 years experience, I prefer personally to work with somebody who's got some life experience under their belt. And no blows here, but it cracks me up when people come out of college. They're like, I'm going to be a business coach. And I'm like, have you had a real job?
Yeah.
Just college. Right. I want the business coach that has the scars to help me through and say, oh, don't go that way. Detour. Warning. So I take the other approach where I want the experience under their belt. And that's what I use as a qualifier, because I don't want somebody brand new handling my money. Just same thing with payroll and HR. You should be hiring somebody. That's a huge headache and a small $10 an hour task you can offload. Hire somebody that knows about that. And then you focus back on being a lawyer, running your law firm and scaling. So that's why I bring on experts in their field to the podcast to help you be introduced to who to talk to. I'm making it easy for you here.
Yep, you are. And another little known tax benefit is R&D, research and development. A lot of people think it's just for manufacturing companies, but as a law firm, you do some research, you bring in AI, you bring in your intake system that you have, which is AI based. So you've spent time, you've spent money on that. I would check with your CPA to see if there's a way to deduct some of those expenses as well. R&D is not just for manufacturing or software companies. It's for anybody who's actually spent time doing some research and development for their business. So don't overlook that one either, because with all of the AI and all of the technology tools and everything that's out there, if you spent time looking into those and you implemented them into your business, you might get a tax break.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Soft plug to intake EQ, a big blind spot that we see in law firms. And I would say probably a good 8 to 9 out of 10 are missing that mark. So that's something that, took me a lot of time. That's a great point. I actually had not noted that it took me about 6 months to come up with an AI that sounded like a real person. That's why we call it intake EQ, emotional intelligence. They have to sound compassionate. They have to sound like a real person that's working at the front desk of your firm, because these are expensive leads and calls coming in, and one of those going to voicemail. I say missed call is missed opportunity.
Yep. No, and it's good to have that. And just, again, I'm not a CPA. K'Lee's not a CPA either. Always check, but I would not be afraid to ask them about some of these rules and some of these tax breaks, for lack of a better term. You're paying this individual to file your tax return. They should be proactive. Today's Wednesday, I've had 3 conversations this week already where someone has said, can you recommend a CPA that's more proactive than the one I currently have? It's just happening more and more because people are tired of hearing about their friend, their neighbor, their business partner paying less in taxes than they are, not having using the same tools or strategies because their CPA is not telling them about it. And this isn't a slam against CPAs, so let me be very clear on that. They're high quality professionals. Either they're swamped, they're overworked, or they're just too busy to come up with certain strategies for certain people. Try to find one that could be proactive for you.
Yeah, and that's what having a wealth strategist that also knows to remind you to ask these questions, because even the best CPAs during tax season, they do get slammed and they're not thinking outside the box as a strategist for you. They're trying to process your returns so they can get to the next one. So coming in with some of this information preloaded to make them think and be a strategist is definitely that. Same thing with marketing. I do that literally. My first call with clients is called a discovery call. It's not a sales call. It's me discovering, are we a good fit to work together? And a lot of that is, I need to know your numbers. Like, I need to know I use the example on another podcast, Frank. Somebody asked me, I said, that's like meeting with someone and they say, hey, K'Lee, I want to go to New York on a trip. And I'm like, cool, I can get you to New York. Where are you? And they're like, and I'm like, we have to have a starting point before we can get you to your destination. And
Yeah.
I think that's overlooked a lot. Like we've been talking big picture destination, but without a strategist that knows how to show you where you are if you don't know that already, which I get, again, it seems so simple, but 9 firms out of 10 that I talk to, I'm talking high level basic marketing numbers. And it's that same, like they're just looking around or struggling. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't enjoy seeing that deer in the headlights look. It's just something is wrong when that happens, or someone will tell me about the amount of taxes that they paid, and like, why did you let that happen? It just did, and we didn't have enough time. Tax planning is not just showing up on April 1st and handing over your receipts and documents. It's a year-round thing. Believe it or not, there's still time in 2025, not much, to do some things for 2025, but you would have to act pretty quickly. If you haven't filed your 2024, you're dangerously close to being out of time, and there's probably only one or two moves that you can do. But if I could emphasize anything, it's year-round planning, and that's what we do with our clients when we're talking to them, because taxes is the biggest expense that you're going to pay over your lifetime. And if we can find a way legitimately to keep more in your pocket than Uncle Sam's, and
Yeah, 100% agree with you. So, Frank, is there any questions that I didn't ask? Anything that we didn't cover today that you're like, oh man, it would be a disservice if we didn't hit this?
I can't really think of any off the top of my head. We covered the blind spots. We talked about some of the corporate setups, covered the retirement planning. I think if anything, I don't know how to tell an attorney, a law firm owner, how to make time for this, but all I can say is you need to make time. Like you, my first call is a discovery call. And yes, we're using warrior language because that's what they're used to, but that's really what it is. What do you
Mhm.
have? Can we help you? Do we like each other? And we can move forward from there. The one thing that I do want to say, and I might have mentioned this last time as well, is no one will ever know that we're working together unless you tell them. And if you want to tell them, that's great. That's fine. But like a lawyer has a confidentiality, I have a confidentiality as well. But also, don't feel bad about the term I use is getting financially undressed. I come across law firm owners that are now making really good money. They weren't making good money 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, and they're not 100% thrilled that they may not have a lot either saved up or put away. I've seen a lot in my years. That's okay. I'm not here to judge. I can't fix your past, but I can certainly help you with your future. So if you keep that in mind, I think we would get along splendidly.
Yeah, and Frank, you offer a pretty extensive overview, like a pretty extensive overview of their financials, even after the discovery call. So, what does it look like to work with you if someone said maybe they have a guy, maybe they don't? And yeah, to your point, nobody likes to be financially undressed. It's very intimate information.
Yeah.
But say they want to work with you, get with you on a discovery call. What is that the numbers that you offer them, and is there a fee for that, a consultation fee, or what does it look like to work with you?
So discovery call is always going to be no charge. We're not in the mindset of I'm going to charge somebody $500 for 30 minutes of time or an hour of time. We're not going to do that. But typically a discovery call can be anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Once it's decided that we do want to move forward and start working together, then we have our next call, which is going to involve gathering information about you and your situation, whether it's statements, whether it's information about what you have, benefits at your firm. And we put all that together, and then we enter into what we'll call a financial planning engagement. It's going to vary what that fee for that is. It just varies based upon complexity. So hard for me to say a number. I'd rather not pigeonhole myself that way, but it's all based on complexity. We do flat fee, and the reason we do flat fee is I don't want you to feel worried about emailing me, calling me, and I got to start keeping tabs of a 13-minute conversation, right? I tell people I'm your 911, I'm your 411. So with a flat fee, we can cover that. Nobody has to worry about anything extra. As your situation gets more complicated, the fee gets adjusted. If it gets less complicated, the fee gets adjusted as well. But I'm looking for long-term relationships. I'm not looking for a one-time transaction. I really like to be involved with our clients. We call them friends. And I've been to weddings, I've been to baby showers, I've baptisms, I've been to funerals, unfortunately. we can get as involved with the family as much as possible. But that's how we treat our people. We're very friendly with everybody that wants to have that kind of relationship, of course, but it's pretty easy when you get down to it.
Perfect. I'm going to put all of Frank's contact information in the description below so you guys can reach out to Frank if you're interested. Also, go back and watch the Rockefeller Method. I had another amazing interview with an introduction that Frank made, actually a fractional CFO, Leah Miller. So if you're interested in numbers and knowing more about what your numbers look like and how healthy your firm is, those are some great next podcast episodes to watch. And we will see you guys in the next one.